In this video, we're going to look at how to create our hole pattern. When we create a hole pattern, we should have an understanding of what's known as concentric circles. Okay, so circles within circles, and they share the same center point. Okay, so that means that the circles will never cross, they have different radiuses, and they share the same center point. So what we can do is create our first circle just by clicking on center point circle and clicking on our center point here and dragging it out. This will be that large hole that bushings fit through and axles fit through, and I don't have to be quite accurate with the dimensions right now. I just need to make it approximate. So let's go close to, I think it is 7, and I'll just put it there. Okay, and I'll do that to the other side as well. Create a circle with about a diameter of 7. And I can see this little symbol in front of 7. It's a circle with a line through it. That's the symbol for diameter. Now I'm going to switch to construction and create a second concentric circle that is larger, and that'll be used as the guide point for the ring of smaller punch throughs that go around the main one. Okay, so I'll do that, and I'll do it to the other side as well. Again, these construction lines are just guides. They're not going to actually define the shape, but they help us place things symmetrically or in the position we want. So now that I have these construction guides created, we will turn off our construction and our center point tool right up here at the top. And we will come over here and look at the measurement tool to define the actual measurement itself. So we'll grab this, we'll pull it out, and we'll define it as 7 millimeters for diameter. And then we'll grab the construction line and pull it out and set it to the value of 16. Okay, so that is the center to center point diameter of those smaller holes. Rather than setting these to measurements, I would rather set them to be equal. So I'll turn off my dimension tool, I'll select my inner hole on both sides, you can see them highlighted here, and I'll come up and press the equal button. I can also hit E on my keyboard. I'll then do the same thing for these construction circles, and as you can see right now, the one on the right is much bigger, but when I hit E, it should shrink to the same size. Okay, so that's good. We've set up a constraint. I'm going to pull these diameters over to the side just to get them out of my way, and you'll notice that I try to keep some order here so I can easily read my sketch. Now what we need to do is go and place the little circles around for cuts. Now what we need to do is go around the little circle. Now what we need to do is go around the main construction circle and place our smaller secondary holes for screws, our attachments, and we can do this quite simply by grabbing that center point circle tool and just going around really quickly and drawing some circles, not worrying too much about the diameter, because we've seen that we can set that quite easily by using a constraint to set them equal to each other, and then setting the dimension of one of them to set the dimension of all of them. So you'll notice that I'm being very messy with my circles, and that's okay, because I'm trying to prove that point here. Okay, so I have all my circles drawn on my page. You'll notice that each center point is surrounded by a series of 8 secondary attachment points, and those are going to be the screw holes. So the very first thing I want to do is turn off my center point circle tool, and I want to go around and select all my circles. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to be careful just to select my circles, make sure that they're the only things turning orange. You'll notice that there are a bunch of constraints popping up, known as coincident constraints, because they're sharing the center points of where the tangent, where the normal line is meeting the outside of the circle itself, the circumference. Okay, so we can ignore those little coincident angle dimension notes right now, and just make sure we have all of our circles selected. Come up here and hit equal. Okay, so now they've all transformed to the same dimensions, and then we can use our dimension tool to define a single circle over here to the side. And currently the diameter is set to 3.27 on my screen, but in reality they should be set to 4 millimeters. So I can hit the number 4 on my keyboard and hit enter, and all of the circles will adjust to the proper size. So now I have a defined sketch using parameters, known as the measurements and the constraints up here, to define an object. And that's very good. And if I was to rotate this, I'll notice that it looks just like a sketch. There's no depth to it. It doesn't really exist in space. It's just sort of there. So I'll center back on my right view by clicking on it. I'm confirming that all of my measurements are still okay, and that's good. It's 90. I have my outside radius of my fillet set to 13.5, my height to 27, and then my 3 primary diameters, my inner cutout being 7, my guide circle being 16, and my outer attachment circles being 4. And that's all we need for this parametric design. And I can show you right now, if I take my 90 and switch it to, let's say, 100, so let's actually take that dimension tool off, double click the 90 and hit 100, my design lengthens, but everything stays the same. If I switch it to something shorter, let's say 50, the design shortens and I get a smaller bracket. So I can see the value of this already in terms of a tool itself for design purposes. And let's say, like I said in the intro video, let's say I come back over here and that circle is defined as 4. If my printer is over extruding, so it's giving out too much plastic, I might set this to 4.5. All of my circles get a little bigger. And if it's under extruding, I might set it to something like, I don't know, 3.8. Okay. So I can make the holes a little smaller so they still fit snug against the screws. So very handy. By setting up the constraints, I change one measurement and all of the linked things change as well. And then I can use my height and my width to change the overall dimensions of the bracket for the purposes of what I'm trying to build. Okay, so quite handy. In the next video we'll look at extruding, and in the final video we'll look at the export process.